So my proposal here is that for 99,000 years, we've seen distractibility as an advantage and as a strength. And suddenly, in the middle of the 19th century, we say to children, okay, it's important that you learn how to read. We're going to make everybody go to school now. Whereas it used to be that every child would work in their father's blacksmith shop or on the family farm, learn that trade and carry that into the next generation. Now you have children sitting in the classroom who are distractible, who 100,000 years ago would have seen that distractibility as a plus. Now it's a minus, and it's interfering with their ability to learn in the classroom, to learn to read, and to learn appropriate social interactions with other children.
Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, brings you information on how you can recover from any mental health issue and achieve a happier life. If you want to know more, please check out his trailer. Bob's notes on today's show follows.
Welcome to Part 3 of Real, Best of OTR, Achieving Mental Health for Real. Part 3 of Real picks up in 2021 and goes through 2022. Our first episode is about a woman who was diagnosed with bipolar 1 and became addicted to opium. It's the story of her recovery, called It Doesn't Have to Be That Bad, Story of Bipolar 1.
So I ended up being, my first stint in the psychiatric hospital was for 45 days. And during that time, my husband served me with divorce papers.
Oh, no.
And he was fighting for full custody of our daughter.
Were you having troubles before this, or was it solely because you went into the hospital and he could handle it?
I think there were some troubles before because going back with the opiates.
Oh, okay.
And luckily I've been clean from that since 2013.
That's good.
I've gone down that whole road and everything. It's been a very long road.
Sounds like it.
Going through all that and stuff. And of course, a lot of times people will describe a divorce as a death. And especially when you weren't ready for it and you feel it came out of nowhere.
Yes. I had a divorce in 94. That was just like that.
Yes. And to me, I think that makes it much more traumatizing and so much harder to get past and get through and work through it because you're already going through your own issues, that you're trying to work through. And then it makes it very hard and I understand some people can't deal with it, but timing was very bad.
Yeah. It always is.
Yeah. Timing's always bad. But, getting a call from my mother whenever I was in the hospital and just said, I just got papers served to me because I was in the hospital still.
That's terrible.
So, yes,
and did that make your condition worse? Or?
I think it did. Definitely it did.
Were you having depression as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I say I have bipolar 1, that there's so much that goes into that. And I have the mixed episodes is what I'm considered. So I go back and forth.
So it's bipolar 1, you would consider it? Okay. Do you have manic episodes or something?
I do get manic episodes, and I will sometimes be depressed with the manic episode.
Okay. What are the manic episodes like? What do you do differently?
A lot of times when I'm manic, I just talk a lot faster. I'm up doing several different things, very scattered-brained, or I can focus on one thing, but it's almost like you're on drugs. It is just, if you were to see somebody in a manic state, a lot of times you're thinking, what's wrong with them? I'd say I know it's hard and it's a long road, and it's doable though. It really is doable. If you, I think, apply yourself to it and are willing to go to get help for it. And understand it's not something that's it's not just wrong with you. It's not something wrong with you. It's something, you were born with this. Or certain circumstances in life has triggered things in your life. And there's ways out there, and there's techniques and stuff that you can actually learn to help with that. Like, it doesn't have to be so bad, is what I would say. Just, and like you said, turn the channel. When you're hearing those things, I think that's a great analogy for that, is turn the channel. Yeah.
Well, the guy I talked to said, what radio stations don't you like? And I said, I don't like country. And he goes, well, you know what? What do you do when country music comes on? You shut it off or turn the channel, right? Mm-hmm. So just do the same thing for your thoughts. Right. You don't like them, and it works. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
It is hard.
It works. And it doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work, no. And I think having a good support system, too.
True.
Having a very good support system and stuff. And, if you're at the stages that, especially if it's earlier on, or maybe if it's not early on and, it's just it maybe a different level than mine, counseling, I think, it's great.
Right. And that's the first step, is counseling.
Yeah.
To see if you should go any further.
Exactly.
Unless it's just really horrible to begin with.
And, a lot of people I've noticed in a lot of groups that I've attended and stuff is a lot of people go, but they don't open up or talk.
No.
And I think that I wish that they would be able to open up, because it would help so much. It really does. And you're not alone.
Right.
You're definitely not alone. There's millions of us out there.
The next episode is about a mother, Samantha Hudson, as she tells the story of her daughter of 13 slipping through the cracks of the UK CAM system, and how Amy turns to cutting herself to numb the pain and anguish of mental illness. Sadly, many young adults are cutting. The episode is called Amy, As Long as the Cuts Are Not Too Deep.
Amy's very clever when it comes to self-harm and that kind of thing. She got to a point where she was sort of having a medication, and she tricked you thinking that she'd taken it, but she's hid it under her tongue or something, and she's spat it out afterwards, and she'd basically collect them all up for a certain amount of time and then just take them all. She was doing that with a sleep medication as well. She does anything. Yeah, so what they do, basically, because they know that self-harming and cutting is so common with people with mental illness, they basically say if the cuts aren't deep and that they're not needing specific medical attention, or they're not life-threatening, then you have to manage it at home.
Gigi Langer returns once again in OTR's first YouTube video as she covers her 4 strategies for recovery from anxiety, depression, and addiction.
I love this quote. Lying to ourselves is more deeply ingrained than lying to others. That's Dostoevsky. So why do we lie to ourselves? Well, in my case, I grew up in a family with a high-functioning alcoholic father, where my mother was worried a lot of the time. I was the youngest of 4, so things, were not exactly super emotionally nurturing for me in my home. And I spawned my first whispered lie, which is, this term whispered lie is a theme that goes throughout the book, because what we do is we tell ourselves little lies that we believe. And many of these whispered lies were learned from parents or siblings, or destructive or negligence, or it could be abuse, or it could even be, as an adult, a partner or loved one who was abusive. But anyway, they sound like this. I don't deserve love. I'm only worthwhile if I get good grades. I'm nothing without a man. People must like me, or I'm going to shrivel up and die. So these whispered lies are learned, and they get into our neurocognitive system, and they play like a broken record. One of ones my dad said to me is, Gigi, how can you be so goddamn dumb when I would make a mistake? And boy, that one lodged in there too. So of course I got as many degrees as I could and wanted to show, I don't know who, everyone, that I was smart. So part of unpacking the whispered lies is getting honest with ourselves. And that might start out just, wow, when I'm anxious or upset about something, I tend to drink more, or I tend to go online and get absorbed in that instead of honestly admitting to myself how I'm feeling and then honestly going further to find help or a way to cope with my feelings. Because if we deny how we're feeling or we just cover it up and numb it, then we have no chance of changing these whispered lies that are really, building total fear. I'm a victim of the world. It's a really awful place to live. So we get honest with ourselves about how we're thinking and feeling about the situation. We claim a power greater than our fear. We make choices and set intentions for how we want our lives to be. And we use growth practices to these 50 tools. You can choose whichever ones you want to actually change how we're thinking and feeling. But the way it works is, okay, I'm sitting here trying to meditate. I'm trying to focus on my breathing, but I notice myself thinking about so-and-so. And I pat myself on the back for noticing that I'm thinking about this thing. And then I let the thought go past. I don't stick with it. And I return my focus to breathing. Well, my mind's default setting is worry, right? So it goes back to the worry thought or whatever thought. And instead of jumping on that boat and getting all entangled with that thought, I just notice it. Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about my kitty who needs surgery. Boom, it just goes past and I restore my attention to breathing in this case. So a person repeats the process for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. But here's what's surprising. Most people say, oh, I can't meditate because I can't empty my mind of thoughts. I think about it this way. It's not that my goal is to empty my mind. My goal is to notice when I have a thought, any thought, and if I am working on just accepting my thoughts, I just let it go past. And if it has the potential to try to grab my attention, because I'm practicing focusing instead on breathing, for example, I am getting practice at noticing my thinking and redirecting my thoughts and my mind.
Next is a special interview of a woman who suffered with attention deficit disorder. It emphasizes that people with ADHD are not lazy, bad, or out of it. They just learn in a different way. People with this issue can be happy if it is caught and treated at an early age. Listen to a clip of ADHD ADD, the silent disability.
One thing I wanted to make everyone aware of is that ADHD is a silent disability. If I go out in my walker, everybody helps me. They open the door, they say nice things. But throughout my life when I had ADHD, all they did was mock me, bully me. And it's hurtful, very hurtful. And I think there's a lot of people that have this problem, probably most of my audience. And we have to do something about it. It's Mental Health Week. So let us do this. Promise me, parents, that you will get your child tested if they show any signs of the problem, which means they don't know what's going on. They can't follow instructions. They get lost. They lose their items. There's a lot of different variations of the problem. So I plead that you take care of it, because to live with this problem is hell. I live with it all my life.
I have been ADD basically my whole life. If I think back, since the age of 7, I start not understanding like other kids at school. They will understand easily, and I will always find myself struggling and be slower than other kids. So I am now 41 years old. It has been a battle for me, a big struggle to find what was wrong with me, because at that time my parents and the teacher, they were not aware that as it was the attention deficit disorder was not something that was recognized. So basically I spent my whole time at school thinking I was stupid and thinking I was less better than other, because I could not achieve what the other kids was doing at school. So, and the teacher was saying that you're just lazy, you don't want to do anything. Same as my parents, they will say that about me. So, well, I have been in the hotel and restaurant industry for many years, because obviously I failed my study. I wanted to work in the pharmacy to be a chemist, but obviously because of my ADD, I could not. And I want to mention as well in my teenage year, because, you mentioned before, like there is a lot of suicide from teenager, and it's because they feel rejected. I have been in that situation when I was in my 15 until 19 years old. I tried to commit suicide a few times because I feel like I will never be able to have a career because of my disability, but I will not know why am I like that. So I just wanted to put an end of my life, and because I felt rejected, and because you feel you are different, but different not in a good way, different from the society, from what the society wants and expects from you to be.
I believe part of mental health is understanding your world or universe. We try to tackle those tough subjects in the episode. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here?
If we want to talk about how does something come from nothing for a little bit. Yeah, so I also don't think something can come from nothing. I don't think that's possible. So if the Big Bang started the universe as we know it, the Big Bang was the beginning of time itself, time, matter, energy, and space. If that's what the Big Bang started, then nothing comes from nothing, right? So I believe there has to be a cause of the Big Bang. And that cause has to be timeless, because the Big Bang started time. It has to be spaceless, because, again, Big Bang is the beginning of space. It has to be immaterial, because the Big Bang started matter. So the cause of the Big Bang has to be a timeless, spaceless, immaterial cause that is immensely powerful, right? Because the Big Bang is the beginning of the universe. And yeah, so like those are some of the characteristics of this cause. And a lot of people think that's a description of God.
I'm torn because I can't believe that something came from nothing. And I also can't believe that we're going to have something after death. So one almost seems impossible, and the other one almost seems impossible. That there's no meaning to life. That, to me, that seems almost impossible. And so does coming from nothing. So I'm very torn about the subject. I talk about it a lot with my friend who likes to talk about these things. I can't find a lot of people that will talk about it. I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about this, because most people Most people will run away screaming.
I love
no,
talking
you're
about
negative. Get out of here. I don't want to think about that.
I know.
don't think. I just go throughout my day. Give me a break. Hold on. And as far as my son believing in it, I really do think it has a tendency to limit your spirituality. That you don't allow other beliefs in everything, allow everything in, so you can come up with a free will. Here's what I really believe, and also become very spiritual.
Sure, but Bob, I'm not pushing any particular religion.
No, I know
all
that.
I'm saying is, you don't believe that something comes from nothing. I don't either. So, if the Big Bang started the universe, then it must have had a cause, is what I'm arguing. And the cause itself has these attributes. Like, it has to be immaterial, it's got to be timeless, it has to be spaceless, it's got to be immensely powerful, it's got to be, I think, also immensely intelligent, because of the order that we see in the universe. Order also doesn't come from disorder. Information doesn't come from randomness, is another thing. If you believe there is information in the universe and the universe came from the Big Bang, I believe the source of that information has to be a mind, because information only comes from mind. It doesn't come from matter, and it doesn't come from randomness. It comes from a mind. If there is a creator, if there is a cause to the universe, then that opens up the possibility that maybe, there is life after death. There is something beyond that. It's not just a ceasing to exist, is what I'm saying.
Rodolfo De Angeli for 41 years was full of anxiety and depression. He would sleep all the time to forget the pain. Rodolfo was put in a foster home as a boy and suffered abuses as a child and grew up to have many mental issues. Find out in the episode, Life Artist Rodolfo De Angeli, how he turned his life around, and now he is a life artist helping others to heal.
Stumbling on a quote, which is super, super, weird that life can change by reading a quote. And the quote was said that if you do what you always done, you will get what you always gotten, right? And that was to me, that was so profound, because I realized at that moment that I was actually not doing anything to change my life. I was complaining about everything. I was, looking for pity everywhere. I used my depression and my anxiety to give myself what I needed, which was love and attention. And I realized those things when I really sat down and started to be honest with myself, Yes, I had a lot of trauma happening. Absolutely. There's no doubt. But that happened when I was younger. It didn't happen later on, and I carried it. I didn't know how to, obviously, I didn't know how to process things, but the way I chosen to, which was, by acting out, by being wild, by always looking for that next adrenaline rush and whatever,
Right.
It never got me to actually sit down and see, okay, what is going on with me? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken or anything like that, but something is not right, because I'm not happy, right? I'm constantly looking for, a way to be seen. And, when you are at that place, you're prepared to do anything, right? But then eventually, obviously I grew up in Italy. I grew up in Switzerland, sorry. So I lived most of my life in Europe, and eventually came to a point where I left Europe and I came to Australia. And I thought I would leave everything behind me, all the problems, all the stresses, everything. And actually, for the first year, it was like that. When I arrived here, it was amazing. I had the time of my life. I was in a new country. I met the woman that eventually became my wife, and everything was amazing, right? But a year later, everything started to fade away. All the novelties started to fade away, and my my past came to visit again, right? And I always mention a quote by Seneca that says, no matter under what sky you travel, you always travel with yourself. And I read that in his book, On the Shortness of Life, which I absolutely recommend.
What's it called again?
It's called On the Shortness of Life.
Okay.
By Seneca. Absolutely incredible. Tiny little booklet that honestly had a huge impact in my life, because you know what it did, Bob? It allowed me to stop and think. I wasn't thinking. I was just going. I was definitely not being. I was just going and doing and just being busy, trying to escape.
Right. I think we all do a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not
right?
a lot. I like to call it cutting, which is the extreme people that actually cut their bodies to feel the adrenaline because they're in such mental anguish. My theory is that most people will do something to cover up, that deeper pain. Yeah. But go on, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry at all. So eventually all those little things, Bob, and it's amazing because this journey has been 10, 11 years now in the making. And, if I look back, today, who I am as a person, who I became as a man, which is I'm barely scratching the surface, by the way. This journey just started, and it's a long way to go. But I would have never thought 10 years, 11 years ago, when I was in my garage trying to end my life, that today I will be doing what I'm doing, sharing my story, but also serving people and working with, Tony Robbins now, and having been taught by incredible shamans in the Amazon jungle in Peru, the ancient art of shamanism and so on. I would have never thought in a million years that this would happen to me, and yet when I stopped and I was, instead of escaping my pain and trying to numb it with, any way possible. For me, it wasn't alcohol or drugs or anything like that, or anger. For me, it was sleep.
Okay.
So I would constantly sleep, right? I was always exhausted.
Join me as I talk with Wayne Shipman about his journey to homelessness and his recovery and how he finds peace with his new wife and new life. He suffers from bipolar anger, which is similar to the anger that I express with my symptoms of anxiety, depression, and ADHD, which I suffer from. This is one of my favorite episodes as Wayne lays out the ways of our society in the template Scars Run Deep.
We're told that we're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to feel like that, quote unquote. And I had so many people come to me and say, man, you can't walk around here all tore up about what happened 2 weeks ago, that, you broke up with your girlfriend, so what? And it's like, you don't understand the story, And they didn't want to hear the story. They just wanted to see me act. They wanted to see me act as the alpha male with a military uniform, I didn't have that ability. In my world, people that have, minor offenses, Bob, is easy to forgive. But somebody that actually complicated my life so much that I lost 3 decades of my life in confusion, lost relationships. I've got people that have sworn an oath they'll never talk to me again, and this is 10 years after that, and they're still not talking to me. And, even no matter how much I change, no matter how much they see on Facebook or they see me in other public areas where, I'm definitely grown beyond the man I was 10 years ago, but to them, the scars are deep. I thought society was a kind of a facade, it's kind of a fake reality that we just have to go every day, be there at 7:30, leave at 5:30, never talk back, never be in a bad mood, never have a bad day. Not possible.
Politically correct.
Be politically correct. Well, by the time I learned those skills, I was in my 40s. Not when I left home at 18 years old, for crying out loud. So the first, like I said, the first 20 years at least of my life I was a loose cannon. I had no skills. I had no awareness. A lot of the superstitions and things that my family kind of used to joke about kept me so confused about what is reality. They sang happy birthday to Jesus, but they also had Christmas snowman and Santa Claus in the same yard. You know, they got a cross, they got a Santa Claus, they got the Easter bunny, they got Jesus on the cross, they got Sabbath, they got, you know, every holiday of the year they were celebrating. So when it came to religion and spirituality, I had no distinction to know, not necessarily what's true or not, but how to actually achieve what we call emotional wellness. And so now I have this obsessive thing, like I hate liars. I don't like untruth.
I'm the same way.
I don't like half-truth. I don't like deception. I don't like being lied to.
Well, you've been lied to your entire life. You're lied to.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I mean, first there's Santa Claus, and then there's Easter Bunny, and then there's God, which we have no proof. Yeah. And so you were lied to, basically. They don't believe it, and it's not uncommon. I talk to so many ADHD people in a group, and every single one of them says the same thing. People don't believe it's real. They don't believe because they don't. They
believe it's an excuse. Well, you're just using that as an excuse. You got ADHD. Okay, whatever. So why are you so mean to me?
Yes, exactly. And that's it. I mean, they don't want me in their lives because I'm negative and I'm this and I blurt things out and I'm rude and I interrupt people. Everything is my fault because I have a different type of brain than they have. And this is we're an oppressed minority. That's what I call it. Because there are a lot of people out there in my audience that have ADHD. It's a hard thing to admit that you have a problem and that problem is causing relationship problems. So it's a super big problem and nobody's doing anything about it. I'm trying to, but you know, how much can I do with a podcast? Only so much.
Bob, I've realized that a lot of homeless people, minus COVID, I mean, COVID is a different problem, but there's something like 250,000 nationwide, the population prior to COVID was 250,000 homeless people in America. And it's not just economic related. It's because as a society, we have sort of a template of how people should be. We have an expectation how people should be, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And so then our children expect us to just kind of cater to their feelings.
Wear a suit, Dad. My daughter would be upset I wasn't wearing a suit. And, you know, it's like, I didn't have to, so I didn't. But she wanted to Ward cleave her father, I guess. And I didn't know what to tell her. I'm not Ward Cleaver. I'm a weird guy hangs out with weird people because the society doesn't accept us. ADHDers are not accepted. They won't even admit that it's a problem. And I bet you if you went and tested the homeless, 50% of them are ADHD or dyslexic.
More than likely. Yep. I would say it's a Bill. Well, you and I were talking the other day, and I heard this keyword that kept coming up. We were on the phone for a good 40 minutes. You said the word anxiety probably 15 times, and it caught my attention and stood out. And I don't think people realize how real of a problem anxiety is by itself. If you isolate anxiety and turn it into a disorder and then complicate that with ADHD or bipolar, what you have is the anxiety interferes with the skills that we actually do have. Anxiety causes us to amplify our worry about how people are going to interpret or receive us. I'll give you an example. Like, you know, holidays right now, it's Thanksgiving weekend almost. Christmas is coming.
Oh, great.
My anxiety gets so peaked up because I know that, like,
I can't make it through Christmas.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm supposed to interact with my children. I'm supposed to send cards. I'm supposed to get on the phone and talk to the grandchildren. And it's like, they don't really want me to. My kids, that are adults, they don't want me to get on the phone and be a grandpa to their children. And that's fine. That's okay. But the problem is society makes us feel sort of self-condemned when we don't or when we cannot. And that's the anxiety.
But Wayne, it's not okay. I challenge that. It's not okay. They have to be able to go into the real world and realize that some people have problems.
Right.
They don't mean to hurt your feelings. They don't mean to yell. But they're your family. Families have to stick together. You know, I always wanted a perfect family, and my wife just took the rug and took it out under me and moved them down to Charleston. But I was born and raised in New Jersey, and it's very uncomfortable down here for me. I don't go to church. It's very hard for me to meet people. That's what I'm trying to teach people, that they can recover, they can get better, and they don't have to take the shit anymore. They don't have to be bullied around anymore. They don't have to be called a clown. But you don't have to quarrel with this guy. Just ignore him. If he says you're a clown, ignore him or go to your boss. Whatever it takes. You got to stop feeling bad that you're different. You have to accept that you're different.
That's all right.
And that you're an outcast and you have a weird crowd. You're a weird guy in a weird crowd. And that's the end of it. And you go on YouTube, there's 100 videos where the guy says, you know what, my family has a problem with this. My family has a problem with this. What are we going to do? They have a problem. I can't handle it. They can't handle it. Well, America, we have to learn to handle it. We handled COVID. Now we got to handle mental illness, which is before COVID.
Isn't that something? We can handle this. We can handle this airborne bacteria, this virus that killed tens of thousands of people, but it's really hard for us to just handle someone saying you're odd.
In the next episode, I talk with Monique Rhodes, a master at teaching you how to calm your mind and live a happier life. Hear how she can help you on your pursuit of happiness in the episode titled Achieving Happiness.
Yeah. So, Bob, I teach, basically, I'm a mindset coach. I teach people how to be happier. And this has come about by having a pretty tough time in my own childhood and really wanting to understand, was it possible to change my happiness levels or not? And so that's what I set out to do. And that's the work that I do. I basically teach people the skills that I've learned to be able to transform their lives so that they can be happier. I mean, I feel that there are sort of two, what people don't really understand is that if we're living in the past or living in the future, it creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So basically, the situation that most of us live is that we're living with our thoughts running off into the past all the time. And the past is really just an imaginary place because how we see the past is dependent on what it is that we remember, and that is completely subjective. So the past doesn't exist, and it certainly doesn't exist in the way that we remember it. And then the future doesn't exist either because it's not come yet. And the only thing we can do is imagine what the future is going to look like. So if we look at it this way, then what we can discover is that we have two places where most of us are living, the past and the future. Neither of them truly exist. They're figments of our imagination. So if we want to not experience so much stress and anxiety, one of the most important things that we can do is to actually practice living in the present moment. Because if we're living in the present moment, we can understand that this is the only moment that truly exists. And our stress and our anxiety begin to dissolve when we do it. Because our stress and anxiety are dissolving because we live in the only moment that really is existing. So that's why it's very important to do practices like meditation that teach you how to live in the present moment. And what I teach after studying meditation for over 25 years is that I teach you how to bring your mind back into the present moment so that it literally stops dancing off. Because for most of us, our minds are completely out of control. And that creates a level of exhaustion in the mind. And in that exhaustion, we're highly reactive rather than making choices about how it is that we're responding. I mean, I just think the biggest message that I hope to get across is that, it's your choice how you are in the world. And there's no victims in this. There's lots of people who have had very, very difficult lives and big experiences that have happened to them. And each of us have the ability to choose to change our life. And I just really encourage you to do it.
Next, I talk with Kimberly Bell, an amazing woman who overcame abandonment as a child and later sexual abuse to become a beautiful person. The episode name is Kimmy, a woman's battle with PTSD from child abandonment and abuse.
Well, I was adopted through my kinship, through my paternal aunt, and from up to 5 to 6 years, I stayed with my biological mother and father, and I was never reunited with them. I was dropped off, and no one never reunited me with the family, either on my father's side because he had remarried, or my mother. And being separated from my she was 2 years older than me, sister, it was really a challenge. I always wanted to be reunited back with my biological parents, but I was very blessed and fortunate to be raised by older people, even though I went through challenges when I was raised with them. But they did raised me in a structured AME Zion Christian home. So.
Okay, you left your parents when you were how old?
Between 5 and 6. Mm-hmm.
And was there a good reason that they couldn't take care of you anymore?
No, I really never got a reason.
Did they ever take you back in when you got older? Or?
No, sir.
Okay. So you grew up with one foster parent?
And they were my adopted parents from kinship. She was my father's older sister.
I see.
So that was my biological, aunt. My memory, I couldn't remember. I couldn't retain information. I was this cute little brown-skinned girl, but I was just a mental mess. And I thought the more quiet I could be, or the sweetest child without any type of asking for anything, then by hopes that someone would, my biological parents, they would come and get me, figure out what was wrong and come and get me.
Did you think that was going to happen for a long time?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, for a while. Yeah. And, you grow up thinking that what was wrong with me, and, why did my sister stay?
And she's 2 years older than you, your sister?
2. My sister's 2 years older than I am.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And there was no explanation. That's really very sad in a way. I can't imagine that. So there was some type of abuse in your family?
Well, I witnessed physical and mental abuse with my biological family when they were together, when I was small. I never seen the sensitive of, love or holding hands, or it was more of a chaotic atmosphere that they were always in. And then with my mother, especially towards me, was always the attachment. I never really felt the warmth, and I longed for it, even as a child. Sure. Yes. I longed for her to put her arms around me, or say kind things or sensitive things. Yes. And I don't remember any of those things.
Do you remember any time before you were given away that she showed affection?
No. No. I remember my dad, though, coming in and out of the home because, they were married, and he would play with me and my sister, and he would, pick me up, like how fathers would, and tickle me. And, I knew he loved me, but I never felt the love from my biological mother.
In the clip of the episode Repeatedly Dead Fred, What's It Like to Be Dead?, Fred Rutma discusses his strange story of dying over 40 times. Join me as we look at this very unique recovery. Also, we talk about fasting and how that helped in getting healthy.
In the summer of 2009, I started what the doctors thought was passing out. And every time I would pass out, I would collapse and hit my head. And really hit my head, on curbs and manhole covers and, counters in commercial bathrooms, which have those really nice sharp edges. And, had a series of about 20 concussions that we know of. And when you have a whole bunch of concussions, one after the other, it doesn't give your brain a chance to heal. The cumulative effect is pretty devastating.
But you died every time you had the attack. Could you tell us? You didn't see a light, basically, right?
I didn't see the light, which is kind of. I feel like I've been kind of ripped off. Like if you die once and you don't see it, but when you're getting into 15, 20 times and you don't see this, you're like, what's the deal here? Everybody else seems to get this. How come I'm not?
But you did have outer body experiences. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I had a number of those. And mostly I remember, looking down on wherever I was. One time I was riding my bike in the middle of a field. It's a sports field with some bike trails that I would often travel on. And my heart decided to stop in the middle of nowhere in the evening when nobody was around. And I remember just looking down on my body tangled up in my bike and being very confused.
Uh-huh.
So
you were dead at the time you had the outer body.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, depending on what your position is on heaven and hell and God and those things, it could have been my soul trying to leave my body and not knowing if it should at the time. Should I go up? Hopefully up, hopefully not down. And, your soul not knowing whether it should go back into your body or not. Is this the final call or whatever? But I remember seeing everything in the surrounding area and just knowing, there's nothing there but me. Nobody's coming to help. And, is this the final call or is something else going to happen? So I guess something else was going to happen because I guess my soul went back into my body.
So you actually got other benefits from fasting.
Yes, sure. So when you fast, you're actually lowering your insulin levels, which is the first step. And once you start to lower your insulin levels, all sorts of other hormones start to rebalance themselves. And it's amazing. People think insulin is just for your blood sugars, but actually insulin is one of the prime drivers of blood pressure. And if your insulin is constantly high, it puts you in a state where your veins and arteries harden up, as opposed, not with plaque, but they lose their elasticity. So your blood pressure starts to go up. So it's a combination of, yes, you're getting overweight, and that puts your blood pressure up, but it's the constant insulin flowing into your body that really helps raise your blood pressure, which is not what we want. So we know that after a time of fasting, your blood pressure starts to regulate because your veins and arteries become looser and they're able to flex and expand and shrink when they're supposed to. Fasting also works at the genetic level. When you fast for a certain amount of time, it starts activating these epigenetic systems. So your body's got all these protective measures and subsystems that are waiting to be used. They just need the right environment to kick in. And one of the things that you hear a lot out of fasting is something called autophagy. And autophagy is a system your body has to clean out all these excess proteins that get, I guess the scientific term is, folded over and misplaced, and gunk up your cells and gunk up your ability to produce energy through your mitochondria. So once you fast for a certain period of time, your rate of autophagy kicks in, increases, and it starts cleaning out your cells and getting rid of all these excess proteins, and you can produce more energy to keep you alive and healthy and energized. And it works not just in your cells, but it works all over your body. So we know that people who have scars, women talk about their cesarean scars and their stretch marks disappearing because the autophagy attacks all that collagen and scar tissue and gets rid of this. It happens inside and outside your body. It gets rid of the excess fat in your liver, which helps you function more efficiently. When you're fasting, you're running on ketones as opposed to carbohydrates. Your brain seems to prefer ketones, so you lose a lot of brain fog. I know that's been the case for me. From Dr. Mark Mattson, who's a researcher at Johns Hopkins, he's probably the world's leading researcher on fasting and the effects of fasting. I think he just put out a new book, but I can't remember the title. From his work, he finds that when you fast, your body starts to produce these things called neurotropic factors, which work on your entire neural system and help repair nerves and build new pathways and heal brain areas that were previously damaged, like I have with the concussions. It's just been remarkable. And as I said before, I attribute the large majority of my neurological recovery to what's happened to me since fasting. Nothing else has come close to the results I've seen since I started fasting.
The next segment is about a woman named Dawn Barclay describing her new book at the time called Traveling Guide for the Neurodiverse or Restless Children. Researching this episode was the first I heard the term neurodiverse, whose opposite was neurotypical. Finally, a name for the condition I, and so many others, needlessly suffered from. Here is Dawn Barclay.
I was heavily in the travel industry as well as being a writer. And I have now written this book, which is a book I wish had been around when my children were younger. I was surprised it wasn't. And it deals with arranging travel for families that have autism spectrum disorder or mood or attention disorders. And what I have found is that the special needs tips help even neurotypical families. So
one term that stood out for me is neurodiverse.
Yes, yeah. Neurodiverse.
Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's sort of an umbrella term. For me, I was using it to encompass the autism spectrum, the autism spectrum disorder, which now encompasses everything from what was used to be called PDD-NOS, which was pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, all the way to Asperger's, which is no longer, politically correct to say, but everything is sort of an umbrella under autism spectrum disorder or ASD. And I believe neurodiverse will just encompass anything that's not, quote, neurotypical, which people that, might say normal, if there is such a thing as normal. I don't think there is such a thing as normal. I think everybody's on some sort of spectrum. So, or if they just have a child that doesn't feel comfortable traveling, and that encompasses most children, because anyone who's taken out of their comfort zone can be anxious or inflexible. They don't have to be neurodiverse in order to feel uncomfortable with leaving home. And I'm just approaching that topic and talking about different strategies you can use, starting from just going to a friend's house for the night, all the way through a European vacation.
Next, meet Michael McGrutch as he talks about how to navigate in a system designed for neurotypical people. Michael is dyslexic and had trouble at school, but he finds himself in art. We also talk about how ADHD people and other neurodiverse are able to cope in the current system of learning. The episode is called The Smart of Art, Dyslexic and ADHD Neurodiverse Issues Discussed, and is a 2-part episode.
It breaks your heart to see your strengths. I'm sorry. I mean, my childhood was, I didn't have a childhood.
That's too bad.
And I could say, fuck, I didn't have a childhood. And I say, I'm that now. I've never been in, the older I get, the more happy I get. Because I discover and I unwrap myself.
Right.
I feel I was mummified when I came to this world. And now I'm taking the bandages off, and I become more and more me. I come more and more in peace, and that's the moment. This is the extreme peace.
When I do that, they reject me more. The more I become who I am, the more they reject me.
So what? Okay, and then you are smart. What is the solution? I don't know the solution. That when you come to your essence, that's your power.
Yeah.
You must come to your essence. Except there's so much built up. Acceptance is a great tool for dyslexia.
Yeah.
Accept that you can't read, because then you can start learning to read. You cannot, if you're non-accepting, you can't read. If you say, hey, it's a fact, I can't read, and I can't read out loud, I stutter. You cannot, the moment I spoke the words, I said, I can't. And I told myself, and I accepted that fact, is that I don't stutter now. I could have never talked to you 20 years ago, like I'm talking now. I would not be understandable. Dyslexia for me is a superpower. I don't see dyslexia as a hindrance. I just say dyslexia, very strategic. Dyslexia and systems, don't work. Worse than with other humans, but all humans are conditioned to dyslexia and ADHD from the system, because the system is static, and the dyslexia needs time. We need more time, but all humans need more time. That's why we have seasons. That's why we have not yields like in economy that every quarter need a new bottom line. We have nature has circles. It has a period. It has seasons.
Next is an episode called Life Worth Living, Message of Hope, with award-winning author Dr. Gabriele Muller, whose many roles include certified mental health coach, master life coach, professional certified coach, NLP master, and certified mindfulness practitioner. We discuss the stigma surrounding mental health. Plus, a message of hope for people who suffer from any mental illness or are isolated because they are neurodiverse.
Yeah, I think the topic in general of mental illness and mental health it's still stigmatized. Like for me, for example, my mother suffered from schizophrenia, and she got actually ill when I was 8 years old. So it had a major impact on me. And I believe really that the whole topics of mental illness, it is really underrepresented. That's why I'm so happy that you're doing this podcast, because it is very important to shed light on this topic. For him, it was difficult. He couldn't even talk at work about this problem, what happened at home. We couldn't talk about it at school because it was simply not accepted. So we tried to carry on as a kind of normal routine, which of course was not possible because my mother had to undergo a lot of hospital stays that took 2 months, 3 months, or even longer. But we still tried to stick together. And I think that's the beautiful thing in our family, that we managed to stay together as a family to help each other, because most of the families in such cases, they break down as a family. The children might become drug addicts or become alcoholic or even conduct suicide. The parents often get divorced because they cannot bear the strain anymore. It is such a massive pressure on everybody. So we were actually lucky that it was different. And I believe also that relatives have to make also more efforts to understand people that have those kind of diseases and try to support them. I know it is so difficult. I know this from myself, how hard it is when you see a person that you love and this person starts changing because of all these things. But in the same time, if we don't support, if we don't give a strong support framework and network for these people, then it's so hard for them even to get over it. And they need to have this support, this unconditional love, and just to really let them down, like, sorry to say, but like in your case, then to divorce somebody. It's understandable, but it shouldn't be like this, because like this, you remove all this supportive network from the person. And that's why I think it is so important to make peace with this disease, with the illness, because only if we start to accept it as it is, as something that needs treatment, but still a person can live a proper life.
I think people don't know how bad it feels, and they don't know how awkward you could be if you have ADHD, for instance. And they don't understand it, so they look at it as a mental illness. But in some cases, it's really not. But it's just almost impossible to get. You would have to transfer a feeling to another person and for them to sympathize with you, because people don't understand it. They don't get it. I've talked to a lot of people in the ADHD group, and they were basically like, no, my family doesn't get it. No matter how much I try to explain it, they still don't get it.
Yes, that's right. And also, if somebody is not able to go through such a situation, first of all, in future, they might regret it because they can't change it anymore if they run away or if they are not coping with the situation. And in the same time, I didn't understand it when my mother was ill. I understood it only much later. A situation like this can be also an opportunity for yourself to grow personally, to grow more, to become more resilient, to become stronger, and to be able to overcome such obstacles, no matter what happens in your life. But it shapes you as a character. It shapes you to become much stronger, with much more resilience. But it shouldn't define your life. And this is the point. If you are able to cope with it and to learn those coping mechanisms and to process the situation, the trauma, and still to love your spouse, your parent, or sibling, or whoever, then you will be able to, first of all, to get out of it with a kind of post-traumatic growth, but also you will be able to make peace with it. And we should look at it as an opportunity. I myself could have never done the things I did in my life if I wouldn't have had all these really awful experiences in my youth with my mother, because it helped me to become stronger. If you have somebody you love who has some kind of mental illness, and you are able to cope with the situation, to stand by this person, and to really try to overcome all these traumatic experiences and to start processing them, then also you open yourself up for different opportunities that you can say normal people who have never experienced something like this will never be able to do, because you are stronger, you are more resilient, you understand things differently, and you are more compassionate.
Meet Keith Harrison, a police officer in Canada that suffers from PTSD. He has the courage to tell his story as he's still on his road to recovery, like many of us, which includes myself. Keith is a very brave person who has come out to try to save fellow TIR responders.
Yeah, I just thought it was just part of the job really early on in my career with some post-traumatic stress from a call that really kind of impacted me as a young officer, as a young father, and how the birth of my 3 kids. It was a call involving an infant's death at the time when my ex and I were expecting our first. And I didn't quite get the support that I hope nowadays officers are getting. Seems that, things are slowly turning to getting the support after a traumatic call. I didn't have anything. I broke down, be able to talk to somebody about my feelings, but it was quickly kind of told me that I had a job to do to get back in there. I know when I was struggling, when I looked around, we always kind of got told that if there was this energy and this being stigma within the service, that if you were struggling with mental health, or if you were being crazy, you weren't able to be trusted. You were considered a broken toy. You were kind of sent away from the front line so that, you wouldn't be able to infect other people with what you were going through. I know when I was at my lowest, there was a lot of negativity, and I was angry all the time, and I was lashing out, and it was just me crying out for help in ways that I didn't know what to do other than come out and say it. But then I figured, well, if I came out and said, then, I'd be committed to a hospital. So one of the positions I took when I was kind of getting back into work from my time off, I kind of wanted to showcase what a healthy comparison is to other officers, to my colleagues who knew me when I was struggling. And, when they re-saw me, when I returned, they instantly knew something's changed. Hey, I don't know what's going on with you, but you look good. You sound awesome. What have you been doing? And I just took that position to okay, I'm going to be somebody that is going to be open with their struggles, because I know I can feel it and see it in other officers.
Finally, the closing episode of 2022 is called ADHD Revealed: The Real Deal About Medication and the Condition. I interviewed Dr. Walt Karniski, MD, whose new book is called ADHD Medication: Does It Work and Is It Safe? Dr. Karniski has 40 years' experience working with children and adults with ADHD in this very informative episode. He, amongst many others, does not look at ADHD as a disorder, but just a different way of thinking.
Could you tell me what percentage of people get rid of ADHD when they become an adult, and what percentage do not?
About 0%. And what I mean by that is that in just about every case, when children with ADHD grow into adults, they retain most of the ADHD behaviors. That doesn't mean that they're disabled by those behaviors. In some people, and actually a lot of people, if when ADHD continues into adulthood, it causes significant difficulties. Well, the other thing to remember about this is that even though I said that the behaviors of ADHD continue into adulthood, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be disabling. As a matter of fact, many people with ADHD have taken their ADHD and benefited from it, and benefited from some of those behaviors. For example, a person with ADHD who has difficulty focusing on detail and remembering detail might have a problem working on an assembly line, picking out objects that were imperfectly made, because they have to have constant focused attention. On the other hand, people with ADHD go into sales or working with people and working out in the community as well. Some people with ADHD get a good executive secretary. Some marry people who their spouses have the attention to detail. So having ADHD as an adult means that the behaviors remain, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be disabling. Let me comment on that, Abby. You've pointed out an important part of ADHD that most books on ADHD, most presentations on ADHD do not comment on, and that is what happens to children diagnosed with ADHD when they become adults. And let me just take a few minutes and talk about that. There's multiple areas in our lives by which we gauge success in life. And let's just take a few of these. Job performance, for instance. Adults diagnosed with ADHD as children are 3 times more likely to have been unemployed compared to non-ADHD adults. They change jobs frequently. They are more likely to have poor job performance, quit a job impulsively, or to have been fired. They often earn a lower salary. One study found that adults with ADHD earned about $10,000 less on the average than adults without ADHD. It affects family and social life as well. People with ADHD have fewer friends. They have more difficult relationships with their parents, spouses, and children, as you pointed out. They move more frequently. They're more likely to parent a child at a younger age. They're more than twice as likely to be separated or divorced, and more likely to have been remarried. Imagine that you're a caveman 100,000 years ago, and you live in a tribe of 30 people with men, women, and children in this small tribe. And your job every morning is to go out and pick berries for the family's breakfast. So one morning you're hunched over this bush picking blueberries, and you're putting them in your leather satchel, and all of a sudden you hear a rustling in the bushes behind you. If it turns out that it's just the wind blowing the bushes, then you can go back to picking the berries, bring the berries back to the cave. You're popular. Everybody's happy. You mate with the lead female. You have children, and you carry that distractibility gene to your next generation. If that sound is a saber-toothed tiger, then you can pull your knife and fight the saber-toothed tiger, or you can run. But in either case you survive. You get back to the cave. You have more children. You carry the distractibility gene to the next generation.
A neurotypical person wouldn't have this quality. He wouldn't hear the bushes.
Correct. But I guess what I'm saying further is that 100,000 years ago, the person with attention or distractibility would be called neurotypical.
Okay.
Because that's what saves his life.
Right.
The fact that he's distracted allows him to see if that rustling in the bushes is the wind or a saber-toothed tiger.
Right.
Whereas somebody who does not have distractibility doesn't turn and look and gets eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So he never gets back to the cave. He never has children. He never carries the distractibility gene to the next generation. So my proposal here is that for 99,000 years, we've seen distractibility as an advantage and as a strength. And suddenly, in the middle of the 19th century, we say to children, okay, it's important that you learn how to read. We're going to make everybody go to school now. Whereas it used to be that every child would work in their father's blacksmith shop or on the family farm, learn that trade and carry that into the next generation. They didn't need to know how to read or to do math problems or whatever. They just did what their parents did. So and because of that change, now you have children sitting in the classroom who are distractible, who 100,000 years ago would have seen that distractibility as a plus. Now it's a minus, and it's interfering with their ability to learn in the classroom, to learn to read, and to learn appropriate social interactions with other children.
That ends part 3 of Real Best of OTR in the 2022 season. Don't miss the final entry of Real, which will premiere on Christmas Day 2024, and a live broadcast of all 4 episodes on YouTube and Facebook Live all day Christmas Day. 2025 will be the best year yet, with great guests, other surprises, and more tips on how to achieve mental health for real. Don't miss it as we put a dent in the stigma of mental health through the empowering information that can turn you around. You just need to admit that you have an issue and you are brave enough to get the help that's available. The needless suffering ends here. Keep fighting.